Hazır kapağı yan kalan.
না কালো হ্যাঁ কালো
Request to all, please keep your mic off and video off.
Screenshot है proof manual. Oh. Mà điện rồi nha.
का साथी Hello.
Good morning to one and all. I, Dr. Gayatri Ahuja, on behalf of Department of Education, AYJNISHD, welcome you all in the national webinar sessions on learning and innovations for inclusive education. Now I request Dr. Varsha Gattu, HOD, Department of Education, to give welcome address.
Gayatri, am I audible?
Varsha ma'am, just wait. Varsha ma'am, just wait. Your mic is off now.
Suni ma'am's mic is has to be off. Am I audible, Gayatri? Now, Uttam, मैं सुनाई दे रही हूँ?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can continue.
Yeah. Welcome to all. नमस्कार. डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एजुकेशन जो आप सभी का डिपार्टमेंट रहा है, including all our directors, myself, HOD, Dr. Suni Matthew, Asmita Huddar, and so many of us, including Amitabh Mishra, all of you all from all different places. It's our own department and our own institute जिसने हम सबको यहाँ तक लाकर रखा है. So welcome to your own home, to your own Department of Education. I'm so happy that all of you all have joined for the National Webinars Inaugural Program. We are expecting the Joint Secretary, and we have so many other dignitaries and the national professionals, including Professor Sudesh Mukhopadhyay, the former chairperson of RCI. And I'm told that, Dr. Aloka Guha, Anita Julka, Jayanti Narayan, and so many others from the University of Mumbai and SNDT, Sujata Bhan, Preeti Verma, and Shefali Pandya are likely to join. So I just welcome you all to this national webinar. The next slide. The participants of the next slide, Uttam. We have, I welcome our Joint Secretary, Sir Namaskar. This is Dr. Varsha Gattu. I am Head of the Department of Education. And we have Professor Sudesh Mukhopadhyay, as I told you, the former RCI chairperson with us. And we have Aloka Guha and so many other dignitaries and national level people. Sir, we had a very unique way of organizing this national webinar. We have our alumni group very strong, and alumni from all over the states have taken the lead. So all of them have proposed the names of people who could participate and take the mission forward of RPWD Act and the new policy. So as you see on the screen, we have participants from all over India, and sir, right from Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh to Andaman Nicobar Islands, and from Kutch till Northeast Mizoram, we have the screen full. Next slide, please. Why we have chosen the theme of 21st century learning model and the 6 C's is because the new national education policy launched strong, and the RPWD Act and UNCRPD all talk a lot about the 21st century learning model, which says that besides the core subjects of math, science, history, geography, we have to develop the life skills in children, learning and innovation, and information communication technology, for which standards have to be laid. We have to have the curriculum and instructions geared towards it, and the professional development of educators for capacity building, and develop the learning environments that way. So we picked up the 6 C's, which earlier were only 4, sir, which was communication, collaboration, creativity, etc. But we have added the character building and the culture to it because of the recent policies, because we have to have a culture of innovation and inclusion, and we have to have also the character building, which is so strongly rooted in our policy. The next slide, Uttam. So the 6 C's are addressed on the 6 days. Sir, we have people outside the disability domain to talk about it. Also, because we thought that we have to get conceptually correct. What does character mean, or what does culture of a school mean? So we have people coming from Ramakrishna Mission as well as other strong organizations. And this is the schedule of the 6 days from Monday to Saturday. And we culminate into our 9th August program. The next and the last slide. These are our speakers, sir. We have Upasana Madam from NITIE, Ramakrishna Mission. We have from Pratham, we have Farida Lambe, and we have all over people who are practicing people. So I welcome everybody. I welcome all the dignitaries, participants, especially our Joint Secretary on behalf of the director, staff, students, and alumni of AYJ. Thank you very much. Over to you, Gayatri.
Hello. I can speak from my mouth. A very good morning to all of you. It's indeed an honor for me to meet my fellow rehabilitation professionals and mentors on the very first day of this month. August is very special to all those who have been associated with AYJ, whether they are professionals, students, or individuals with speech and hearing disabilities. It is in this month the Government of India, through the Ministry of Welfare, has dedicated the AYJNISHD Institute for the Speech and Hearing Disabilities to the nation for improving the quality of persons with speech and hearing disabilities through clinical activities, human resource development, outreach and extension activities, research, and so on. As we are entering into the 37th year of service, on 9th August, AYJ is committed to reach out to all As we are entering into the 37 years of service, we are committed to reach out all through all the services and support. At this inaugural session, we have our Joint Secretary with us. We also have the rehabilitation experts. We have the rehabilitation experts with us, and also the field experts who are joining in this morning. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the blessings and the support that the rehabilitation professional experts and centers have been given to us. I also take this opportunity to congratulate the Department of Education headed by Dr. Prabodh for conceptualizing this webinar series, collaborating prominent personalities of the country and bringing a new dimension to the concept of inclusion. I could feel the innovation not only on the theme selected, but also the way the series is planned. I have a pleasant duty of introducing our chief guest, Dr. Prabodh, Seth, Joint Secretary, the Department of Persons with Disabilities, MSJE. Dr. Seth is very well-known name in our disability rehabilitation sector and holds an important position at the Ministry of Social Justice. Dr. Prabodh Seth is a 1989 batch Indian Revenue PhD from the Kanpur University. In service, he did MSc in Public Economic Management and Finance from the University of Birmingham, UK. And Strategic of China. History as Joint Secretary, he has worked in various positions, different places in India and abroad. His career spanning around 30 years, Dr. Seth has served in various positions and as Assistant and in our neighboring areas. He worked in the Government of India as Under Secretary in the Tax Policy and Legislative Division of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. He also worked as the Deputy Secretary in Finance Division, Department of Expenditure, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. While his service in Mauritius, Dr. Seth served as authority over more than 6 years. In June 2000, Prabodh Seth joined the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities as the Joint Secretary. During the first half of his service at the ministry, he has been looking after the policies, schemes, and programs of the government to improve the physical, social, of the government or a government disabled person for purchase or fitting of aids and that is the ADIP scheme, and also the disabled rehabilitation scheme. He has taken a lead role and ensured that the ADIP support to the disabled should reach out to all the unreached areas and population. It was during his time the DDRSS has undergone a revision and new guidelines of 2018 were implemented. This has helped many of us in starting centers, preschools, special schools, CBR activities with the government support in various parts of the country. As a change agent, Sir has contributed immensely to create an enabling environment to ensure equal opportunities, equality, social justice and empowerment for persons with disabilities and encourage the voluntary action for ensuring effective implementation on the rights of persons with disabilities 2016. As years pass by, the portfolios got added more and more. At present, 9 national institutes and around 19 composite rehabilitation centers, that is for skill development, rehabilitation and empowerment of persons with disabilities, that is administrative control. Sir is also holding the and the National Institute of Medicine apart from his regular duties. As a chairman of the national institutes and their activities. In fact, Sir's guidance one year from the cochlear implant, thereby breaking the previous year's records. And AYJ could start the postgraduate diploma of auditory verbal therapy program, conducted many short-term training programs benefiting more than 7,000 rehab, and several activities during the last 1 year. And Sir, your leadership and you as a chief guest, have you in this platform and also an opportunity to listen to you this morning.
Request to all, please keep your mic off and video off, otherwise it becomes very echo thing. Request.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Sir.
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Can you hear me? Mrs. Messi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. First of all, I'll request everyone to switch off the mic because there's a lot of echo.
Okay.
So should I start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm audible, clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Professor Sudesh Mukhopadhyay, former chairperson RCI, Professor Anita Julka, Dean NCERT, Dr. Aloka Guha, former chairperson National Trust, Professor Jayanti Narayan, Deputy Director NIMHR, Professor Sujata Bhan, current HOD, and Professor Preeti Verma, former HOD of SNDT, Director Ali Yavar National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities, Mrs. Soni Matthews, Mrs. Varsha Gattu, who has worked hard for organizing this very important webinar. Good morning to you all. First of all, I would like to thank Ali Yavar Jung National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities for giving me an opportunity to inaugurate the webinar on a very important topic, and that is learning and innovation for facilitating inclusive education. The topic is extremely important, and I am sure that the deliberations we are going to have during the next 6 days starting from today will lead to a number of very important recommendations of the webinar. I have been told that in this webinar, the innovations in the field of inclusive education will be discussed. Well, inclusive education is extremely important, and improving the quality of education has been highlighted as one of the goals in the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Further, improving the quality of education and inclusive education have also been highlighted in other important and relevant documents. This webinar is going to stress on the 6 C's for improving inclusive education, and I've been told that some of these have been added recently, like for instance, culture and character. All these 6 C's like culture, character, citizenship, creativity, and so on and so forth are going to improve the quality of inclusive education and will be extremely important. As far as the government is concerned, a lot of emphasis has been laid on inclusive education, whether it is the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which was enacted in 2016 and finally brought into force with effect from 19th of April 2017, and various schemes, policies, and programs of the department. If we talk of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016, sections 16 and 17 emphasize the importance of inclusivity in education and lay down certain duties and responsibilities of educational institutions on the one hand and government on the other. As regards various educational institutions, it has been laid down in section 16 that the institutions have to make their campus accessible and also provide transport and other facilities to students with disabilities so that they are in a position to attend these schools. As regards the government, a lot of important responsibilities have been laid down in section 17 of the RPWD Act. One of the responsibilities is to provide scholarships, various types of scholarships, starting from the pre-matric scholarship to scholarship for top class and higher education, so that students with disabilities are able to join schools and then study with other children so that their futures can be improved. Another important thing which has been stressed and has been listed as one of the responsibilities of the government is the stress on provision of aids and assistive devices. While directly the provision of aids and assistive devices lead to the physical empowerment of the Divyangjan, but all those children who are supposed to go to school or who are in school going age, unless they have those aids and assistive devices, it is impossible to conceive these children going to schools. So the scheme for distribution of aids and assistive devices is extremely important, so that these children, after being equipped with these appliances, are in a position physically to go and attend various schools. Another important thing is the accessibility aspect, which also leads to enabling children to go to school. So these type of duties and responsibilities of the educational institutions on the one hand and government on the other, as highlighted in the RPWD Act, will go a long way in promoting inclusive education. For promoting inclusive education, there is also a provision for reservation of persons with disabilities in government-aided higher educational institutions. Earlier, under the PWD Act, 3% of the seats in government-aided higher educational institutions were reserved for persons with disabilities. The RPWD Act of 2016 created another landmark in this direction by increasing the reservation percentage from 3% to 5%. Again, a step in the direction of facilitating and promoting the education of children with disabilities. If we promote education of children with disabilities, then we are in fact promoting a sort of inclusivity, just trying to ensure that children with disabilities do not feel disadvantaged on account of the fact that they belong to this category. When it comes to the schemes of the government, we have a number of schemes, and they directly or indirectly go a long way in facilitating education for children with disabilities. As I mentioned earlier, scholarships for students with disabilities is very important, which has been highlighted in section 17 on inclusive education in the RPWD Act. And it is said that the government will provide all types of scholarships. In line with this particular emphasis in the RPWD Act, the Government of India launched a number of scholarship schemes, particularly during the last 5 to 6 years, starting from pre-matric scholarship, which is for classes 9th and 10th, the post-matric scholarship, which is from class 11 onwards, the top class education scholarship, which provides scholarships in 200 notified institutes of excellence. We have the National Overseas scholarship provided to students with disabilities to go abroad. We have another very important scholarship, that is the National Fellowship, where students with disabilities are provided educational institution for pursuing MPhil and PhD in various educational institutions. And then the free coaching scheme, whereby the financial assistance is provided to various coaching institutes and also to students with disabilities for appearing in various competitive examinations. So all these scholarships go a long way in providing facility, enabling students with disabilities to study so that they are educationally empowered. The second important aspect, that is the provision of aids and assistive devices, which again goes a long way in enabling students with disabilities to study. And this has been promoted through the ADIP scheme, that is the assistance to disabled persons for purchase and fitting of aids and appliances. Here also, various types of aids and appliances are provided, like wheelchairs, tricycles, hearing aids, smartphone, smart cane, and so on and so forth. Again, the objective is that once these aids and assistive devices are provided to children, they will be in a position to study. And universalization of education and inclusive education, the two prime objectives of the government with regard to education, are fulfilled and achieved. Another very important scheme is the Accessible India campaign. Not only these students have to be provided scholarships, have to be provided aids and assistive devices, but also the place where they study should also be accessible. If it is not accessible, how will they be in a position to attend their classes? And for that, Accessible India campaign started in 2015 with the prime aim of making all public buildings. Now, when we talk of public buildings, schools are included in this. So all public buildings, transport, and information and communication technology accessible to persons with disabilities. We have made remarkable progress under Accessible India campaign, and the Government of India has been providing funds to the state governments for making their state government buildings accessible. I'm sure quite a number of schools would have become accessible after the start of Accessible India campaign. For now, as regards children with specific types of disabilities, there have been various initiatives undertaken by the Government of India. For persons with hearing disabilities, the Government of India started the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, ISLRTC, which promotes use of Indian Sign Language and also addresses the communication concerns of persons with hearing disabilities. For persons with visual impairment, we have the Braille Press scheme, as per which we are setting up new Braille presses and also modernizing the existing Braille presses so that more and more educational material is provided to children in Braille. So these are some of the initiatives which in fact are specific to certain types of disabilities. If I start listing all the initiatives, in fact, it will take a long time. But what I wanted to emphasize at this stage is the Government of India, through the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, has been and currently is undertaking a number of initiatives for their wholesome empowerment, which will go a long way in promoting inclusive education. As regards the techniques for improving inclusive education and new types of innovations which are going on in the field of inclusive education, I think webinars of the type we are going to have now at the AYJNISHD National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities for a period of 6 days are going to be extremely helpful. While they will suggest us new initiatives that can be undertaken to improve inclusive education. On the other hand, the government also will be undertaking a number of initiatives for the same objective, that is promotion of inclusive education. I'm sure that with all these types of initiatives being undertaken by the government, the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, and its various institutions, our ultimate objective is promoting inclusive education and thereby implementing a very important objective of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act and the United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We'll be able to take it forward. I'm sure next 6 days we are going to have very useful and productive deliberations, and for that I wish this webinar all the success. Once again, I thank you all for having invited me to give the inaugural address in this very important webinar, and I wish all success for this webinar and the institute which is hosting this important webinar.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Request once again, put your mic off. Please. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request Raju sir to give vote of thanks.
I hope you will enjoy the informative webinar organized by Department of Education, Aliaur Jang, Mumbai. It is my honor and privilege to give vote of thanks
Raju
to
sir,
all
please
who
take your
helped
mic
to
on.
attend this webinar. On behalf of Director HOD Education and organizing staff of Aliaur Jang National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities,
May I
at
request
the,
Dr. Raju
at
Iris to
the
please
outset, I would
proceed
like
with
to thank esteemed Dr. Prabodh Seth, sir, Science Secretary, Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. Sir, thank you for sparing your valuable time with us for inaugural function of webinar entitled Learning and Innovations for Inclusive Education, which aims to facilitate the development of the 6 C's, that is, character building, citizenship, culture, collaboration, and creativity in learning. Sir, thank you for guiding on keynotes that the 6 is going to improve the quality of education, accessibility, aids and appliances, access and facilities. RT Act, RPWD Act scholarship, reservation, etc. will facilitate for long way. I would like to thank to Sri KVS Rao, Director, Department of EPWD, MSJWD, Government of India, who has consented to be the chief guest for valedictory function. I thanks all eminent speakers for giving consent to be the resource person of the webinar. They are Professor Upasana Agarwal, Swami Mangala Nath Nandaji, Miss Ritika Sahani, Dr. Farida Lambe, Dr. Revati Srinivasan, and Dr. Manjusri Patil. I record very deep sense of appreciation and gratitude to alumni of AYJ Institute and other eminent persons who have accepted as a state coordinator and provided very big list of participants. I thank national level experts in the field available in this webinar. R. Sudesh Mukhopadhyay, former RCA chairperson, Professor Anita Julka, Dean NCRT, Dr. Aloka Guha, former chairman, National Trust, Srimati Nisha Grover, Founder Director, etc. Dr. Jayanti Narayan, former Deputy Director, NIMH, Professor Prithi Verma, former HOD, Special Education, Professor Sefali Pandya, HOD Education, Mumbai University, and Professor Sujata Bhan, HOD, Special Education, SNDT. Dr. Asmita Uddar, Principal, Ashwadani College, and Brother Ranjit. Of course, I must thank two participants who are very keen and shown interest in participation in this webinar. Without them, program is not possible. At the last but not least, I thanks one and all who are involved in the success of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a next session by 11 o'clock. So request to rejoin everyone by 10:45.
आवाज आवाज म्यूट नव्हता मी बोलतोय तुमच्यासोबत.
Next to be 10:45. Break it. এটা একটু ঠিক করে দেবে গো, সাউন্ডটা আসছে না।
Request to all, please keep your mic off and video off. As you know, expelling people, I'm not liking it. Padma Prabha, please, ma'am, अपना video बंद करें. Rajkumar sir, please अपना video बंद करें. Requesting all to please follow the norms of online. I'm seriously not liking to, expelling people. So please. Priya madam, please switch off your video.
কি হয়েছে আপনি বলেন পুজো দেবো? কি হয়েছে গৌরী? কে মারা গেছে?
సౌండ్ రాలేదు చాలు నేనేం చేయలేదు నాన్న వెళ్తే డోర్ వేసాను వాట్సాప్ ఓపెన్ చేసి
కింద పడిందా
ఏం పర్లేదు ఇట్లా పట్టుకున్నాను నాన్న డోర్ తీసి గట్టిగేసి వేసాను
ఏం నొక్కావు
మళ్ళీ ఓపెన్ చేయను
ఎన్నిసార్లు ఓపెన్ చేయాలి ఎన్నిసార్లు ఓపెన్ చేయాలి
Everyone, please put off the mic and video.
Good morning to one and all. I, Dr. Gayatri Ahuja, on behalf of Department of Education, AYJNISHD, welcome you all. in the national webinar organized by AYJNISHD on learning and innovations for inclusive education. I request Dr. Varsha Gattur, HOD, Department of Education, to give welcome address.
हेलो, नमस्ते अगेन। एक सबको रिक्वेस्ट कर सकती हूँ क्या कि माइक को आप म्यूट कर दें, बंद कर दें। जैसे when we are in the class, how the teacher sets up her class, you know, that she first tells the children, okay, हियरिंग एड्स चालू है कि नहीं देख लो। वैसा मैं बोल रही हूँ कि हियरिंग एड्स यानी आपके माइक्स म्यूट पे है कि नहीं देख लीजिए। एक कैन वी टेक 2 minutes? The host probably also can switch off the mic. Gayatri, switch off the mic. Yes, now it's better. So I welcome you all back again, and those of you who have missed the morning session, I can run the 2 slides for you. The second slide. Yes, the Department of Education is welcoming. We have the participants all over from India. I'm also, welcoming the Padma Shri we have within us, Dr. Javed, and people from Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, especially when there is so much problem in the areas, and Jammu, our own alumni, Dr. Sharad, Mohad, and we have people from Andaman Nicobar, we have people from Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Bihar and Jharkhand. I think brother has to insert the numbers there because we had forgotten yesterday to join the numbers. But Maharashtra, as usual, tops the list. And I know even in NCED, we always say that Maharashtra steals the show. So I don't know whether it is the Maharashtra NCD of which Dr. Raju Arak, Ms. Amita Burde, and Gayatri, of course, and everybody are a part of it. And most importantly, Sadhana Sapre. So many people from Maharashtra, they are very, very active. So I welcome you all again, the participants. The next slide, Uttam, please. See, why we are focusing on the 21st century learning model is because the national policy is also talking about this model. In a minute, I will tell about this model that we have to teach the 21st century subjects of maths, history, science, geography, but उसके साथ साथ हमें बच्चों में लाइफ एंड करियर स्किल्स भी करना है। यानी साइंस का नॉलेज लाइफ में कैसे यूज करना है, उसके जरिए इनोवेशंस कैसे करने हैं, या इंफॉर्मेशन कम्युनिकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज कैसे दूसरे स्कूल सब्जेक्ट्स में कर लेना है। तो ये सारी चीजें जो है ये मॉडल ने बहुत अच्छे से दी है। और वो मॉडल कहता है कि हमें जो इनोवेशन के जो स्किल्स है वो उन्होंने पहले 4 स्किल्स पे जोर दिया था। वन वाज कम्युनिकेशन, क्रिएटिविटी, क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग एंड किसी का माइक वापस ऑन हुआ है, प्लीज माइक ऑफ कीजिए। और सो अभी 2 उसमें और जोड़ दिए गए हैं, दैट इज कैरेक्टर एंड कल्चर। एंड सो आई फील दैट character building is so important, and we see in the national policy also there is so much stress कि बच्चों का कैरेक्टर उनको रूट्स की तरफ ले जाओ, दे आर सेइंग कि हमारा जो प्राचीन काल का एजुकेशन था उस तरफ ले जाइए और स्कूल में एक अच्छा माहौल बने। सो हमने जो 6 स्पीकर्स को इनवाइट किया है वो इसीलिए किया है क्योंकि वो उनका एरिया का डोमेन है। For example, now the speaker is Professor Upasana. She is an expert in communication, probably at corporate sectors, but then she knows the basics of communication. So वही चीज हम लोग तो डिसेबिलिटी एक्सपर्ट्स हैं, हमको पता है डिसेबल्ड बच्चों को कैसे पढ़ाना है या उनके लिए टीचर्स कैसे तैयार करना है, पर अगर कोर हम जान ले तो बहुत अच्छा हो जाएगा. सो ओवर टू राजू अरब for introduction of the speakers. But friends, my colleagues, the alumni and the students, it's very, very heartening to see all of you. And you know, we also have our own pillars of the Department of Education. My colleagues, Raju, Gayatri, Poonam, Swanand, Asavari, Vaishali, everybody has worked so much for it. So हमें सिर्फ इतना ध्यान में रखना है कि हमारा माइक और वीडियो स्विच ऑफ अगर कर ले तो हमारे जो 6 स्पीकर्स हैं फ्रॉम ऑल ओवर इंडिया जो हमने चुन चुन कर लाए हैं ताकि वो आपको उसका कोर समझा सके, तो हम बहुत सारी चीजें अपने लिए बटोर सकते हैं. सो over to you Raju for introduction of Professor Upasana A. Agarwal, and I welcome Upasana A. Agarwal to this family of special education and inclusive education. And she, very few days that I have been interacting with her, she's a great professor, and I feel she has got very effective communication skills. So over to you, Raju, for introducing Professor Upasana Agarwal formally, and then over to Upasana ji.
Thank you, MSJE. Thank you very much.
Raju, are you ready? Upasana ji, I think you will have to switch off your mic first before Raju formally introduces you, and then you can take over.
Thank you, Varsha ma'am.
Is Raju ready or Upasana starts?
Give me 1 second. We have one video to play. Then after that, Raju sir can introduce Upasana ma'am.
Raju's mic. Yes, Raju, you are audible.
Well, today is first day of webinar, and now we are going to start national webinar session. We have here Professor Upasana A. Agarwal. She is going to speak on effective communication is vital for health of any relationship in any situation. Let me introduce Professor Upasana ji. Professor Upasana ji Agarwal is a faculty at NITIE, that is the National Institute for Industrial Engineering, which is a highly acclaimed professional specializing in human resource management, organizational behavior, and labor laws. She has studied in India's finest institutes such as IIT Mumbai and Symbiosis Pune. Starting as a young corporate professional in the prestigious SP Jain College at Mumbai. She has also had corporate experience. Upasana ji's passion for teaching and research has brought her to one of the prestigious organizations such as NITIE. She has guided PhDs and has undertaken independent research projects also in MSJE. Her research areas and national and international presentations and publications are the key areas of talent management and organizational effectiveness, especially focusing on leadership, work engagement, psychological contact, trust, organizational conflict, power politics, etc. Her CV shows she has over 47 recent publications in journals, 3 chapters contributed in books, 1 case study publication. Professor Upasana ji has 40 recent conferences and publications accepted and presented. She has 4 students of doctoral research completed under her guidance. She has undertaken 5 sponsored projects also. Professor Upasana is a recipient of 2010 award for excellence in work from IIT Bombay. Besides being recognized and awarded at various national and international conferences. She is awarded AIMS International Outstanding Young Women Management Research Award and the Best Faculty in Human Resource and Organization Behavior by World HRD Congress 2018. While going through Professor Upasana's credentials, we also learned about her association as a board member for with Center of Diversity Inclusion, and hence we look forward to her thoughts in this national webinar. For concrete tips, especially on communication for inclusion, as her tagline stresses, it for any relation and in the any situation. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Professor Upasana ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju sir. Upasana ma'am, just wait for a minute. We, Department of Education, have made a small video on communication. So, before starting the presentation, let's see this video.
क्या हुआ?
Gayatri, let madam start. I think it's 11 o'clock. We can play it later after her session.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, yeah. It started. Can we?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Upasana.
Okay, can I start?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just sharing my presentation. Is the presentation shared? I have shared my presentation.
It is showing. Yeah, it is showing.
Okay. So good morning, everyone, and a very grateful to Varsha-ji for having me here for this national seminar on learning and innovation for inclusive education. As she's already shared, my name is Upasana, and I am at the moment teaching at National Institute of Industrial Engineering in the field of human resource management and communication. So good morning to you all, and I'll spend about 45 minutes talking to you about communication. And my focus is going to be that focus on universal principles of communication. While I will, as I go forward, make an attempt to look at how this communication principle can also play a role when it comes to children with special abilities. However, let me add right in the beginning of the session that these are universal principles, and this is how we will keep this stand as we move forward. We'll be talking about the importance of communication, what makes communication, what are the building blocks of communication, what is the role of non-verbal communication, what is the role of empathy in communication, what is active listening, and how do we encourage interactions in the virtual world, because many of us as teachers have now moved on virtually. So are there some principles that we can keep in mind when we are, getting in touch with students virtually? So I like to begin my session by talking to you about a difference between a teacher and a professor, because some of us here are professors and some of us like to call ourselves teachers. Let's look at what is the difference. So there's a very beautiful incident that happens between a professor and a teacher in a college. So a professor of philosophy at the University of Houston has explained this difference between a high school teacher and a university professor. So he said to the students, "I'm your professor, not your teacher." He stressed that teachers are evaluated on the basis of learning outcomes generally measured by standardized tests. So if that means children don't learn, then teacher is to be blamed. But he added, "It's not my part of the job to make you learn. At university, learning is your job and yours alone. My job is to lead you at the fountain of knowledge. Whether you drink deeply or you only gargle is entirely up to you." So as far as we are concerned, we are a mixed set of participants here. Most of us are teaching students whose learning outcomes and their learnings are going to be measured, and whether they learn or not learn, to a very large extent, if they are not in high school, we get responsible as teachers. However, teacher of a seniors or of university students, we expect them to be exposed to knowledge. Now, in either of the situations, making children understand and learn about life, world, and subjects is something that's common to both, and we must keep that in mind that at different times we play different roles, that of a teacher or of a professor. But learning is common. Well, this photograph right on your screen is of a mobile, and according to research, since I don't have time to ask you questions, I'm going to also prompt you but also answer the questions. According to research, per day, on an average, each one of us touches a mobile phone 2,617. Please note, this is per day average. There are people who touch it much higher. Obviously, the question is, why does our hand keep going inside our pockets to touch the phone? What is that we are wanting to know? What is that we are trying to understand? Well, what we're trying to understand is that we want to feel important. The moment I pick up my mobile, I want to see how many messages have I got. Individual messages, not necessarily group messages. Because the number of messages is an indication that people are communicating with us, which means I'm important. So the more I am getting communicated with, the more important I feel about myself in somebody else's life. So that importance is something that we all need. That I'm relevant, I'm needed, I'm important. It's a fundamental human need. This is also how it is that children, young children who after getting born get stroked by their parent, touched by their parent, their spinal cord and cerebral system is seen to be much more developed in children who are either orphans or do not get enough of parental attention, especially the mother's attention, because that touch is not there, that physical touch is not there, and the child feels very fearful, and then that impacts the construction and the structure of the brain and other systems. Very quickly to you, one of the unhappiest places on this earth is called a country called Moldova. Now, this is research which is already there, and this is a country which was earlier part of USSR, Russia, and now it's an independent country between Romania and Ukraine and Russia. Now, there are various reasons for why it's called one of the unhappiest countries, but the fundamental reason is that people here don't communicate enough. And because they don't communicate enough with each other, there is always a very high degree of mistrust, cynicism, anger in them. Now, that is, I see some hands up, but I'm going to be taking the questions a little later. So, one of the fundamental issues with this country is lack of trust on each other, which fundamentally is because there is not sufficient communication that's happening, and not talking alone, but communication involves much more and much more deeper things. So to be touched through communication, physically and psychologically, the basic human need is the point I'm trying to bring out. That whether we touch the phone or we touch the child or we touch our neighbors and the countrymen, through communication is a very, very basic human need, and it has multiple impacts. It has multiple impacts on physical and emotional strength of a child. Communication done well, is a social glue. It is something that keeps us together. This is something that doesn't happen in certain communities, in certain organizations, in certain cultures and countries. But when we have that touch through communication, it binds us together. Communication is also very important for all relationships. A student-teacher relationship, like most relationships, is based on the quality of communication and the quantity of communication that's happening between a teacher and a student. Communication is one of the reasons that relationships, marital relationships, either they last or they don't last. Again, the quality and the quantity both are very important. It's fundamental bond between a parent and a child, and it's also important for community. Communication is something which is a fundamental to building trust in any relationship. And trust is fundamental to building productivity, engagement, and learning. So communication is extremely important. And just to give you a very, very quick definition, communication is basically a process by which a message is sent, or messages are sent, or ideas exchanged, verbal or non-verbal manner. Now, of course, needless to say that at least there has to be one person in a communication, more than one person in a communication for it to be called a communication. So that is very important. It could be one or more than one person. Now let's look at building blocks of communication. Why is that certain kinds of communication fail and certain communications are effective? Why is it that some of us are called great communicators, but some of us are called not very effective communicators? Now, fundamentally, that's because the elements of communication, or what is also called the fundamental aspects of communication, which are 5 in together, are respected. When we respect those aspects and we include it in part of our day-to-day communication, whether with a student and teacher relationship or between a mother and a child relationship, parent and a child relationship, all of this respects certain norms. And there are many, but there are 5 basic things we must keep in mind if we have to make our communication effective. The first one is people. You see, in every communication, there is something called a coder and there's something called a decoder. So the coder is the one who sends the messages to a medium. The medium could be anything, could be face-to-face conversations, non-verbals, emails, phones, webinars. And the communicator B, like you all, today I am the encoder who's sending a message through the webinar, and you all will decode this message. And then you will encode this message again, and through your chat boxes, the questions that you are sending to me using that medium, you will send it back to me and I will receive and start decoding it. Now, while all of this is happening, there are some noises around. The noises could be the bus on the road which is causing problem, or something happening outside my window, or there could be internal noises, my own biases, my own expectations, or there could be something about life experiences which is not allowing me to decipher the communication the way it is. Then there is context. The context is we are talking about inclusive education, especially abled. If the same conversation was to be done with high-tech firms, probably the conversation would have gone a little differently. So let's look at each of these elements as I go forward. Elements of communications are coders and decoders, as I said. Now, all encoders and decoders are not similar. We are very different. And when we get into education, we have to understand that we could be encoders. We are the senders. But as teachers, we have to understand what is the decoder, who's the decoder, what are the challenges, strengths of the decoder, and decode our message appropriately. So here is an example to see this very famous movie, Tare Zameen Pe. We all are aware of that famous teacher and a child who was suffering from dyslexia, and how to so that the message is properly received by the decoder. That's the child, Ayan or Ashan, whoever, what is his name, I don't recall. But just look at the way, and I'm going to play the video, how he comes down to the level of the child's understanding to send the message properly. So I'm Gayatri. I'm just playing the video. Please let me know if it plays. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just look at how teacher is trying to understand the child, sense the child. Yes, variability. So this was a very famous movie, and we all know about it. That ability to understand the challenges of who is our decoder is very, very essential. We cannot have the same pattern of understanding with respect to every student being similar. Everybody has very different need, very different necessity, whether it is children who are blind, or a child on a wheelchair, or somebody who's a deaf, etc., etc. So as a teacher, very important for us to get to an alignment with our decoders. Otherwise, message may be very well intended, but it may not still go through. If the session was being conducted for children of 3rd class, I'll have to make my message very differently than if I was to make people who are teaching children to have this session. So that's a requirement that every teacher needs to take care of. Now, after people, which is encoders and decoders, the next is element of communication is message. What is that we say? And as I said, it is never possible that we don't communicate. One of the fundamental principles of communication is you can never, ever, ever not communicate. Even in silence, we communicate. When I'm silent, if I'm being asked a question, it means either you do not agree with me, or you have a different point of view, or you agree with me. So even silence is speak. And that is what we need to understand. Which can be communicated through silence, through what we say, also what we wear, how we smell, how we touch. Each one of which is very critical. When we speak, and I'll talk to you more about this when I talk about the role of words, the words that we are using. How are we looking at children? How are we treating children? How are we composing our message? Very important. How do you speak? How do you speak? Now, here is another very interesting video which I'm going to play. This is from a famous movie called Dead Poets Society, where Professor Keats comes in and he wants to tell students about understanding beyond science and mathematics poetry. And just look at it, it's a very short video, how he goes about communicating with the students. These students were earlier not listening to him, but he again comes down to their level, understands what their motivations are and talks to them. Here is a video. So I'll move on. The point was, just look at how students are wrapped in his attention. They're wrapped with attention because he is able to stir them emotionally for a subject like poetry. What we are very, very important, barring students who can't see, but you see how you wear, what you wear, how you come into the class. Just look at the attention and the authority a teacher would command when she's draped in a uniform which a teacher is supposed to wear. So yes, even what we wear, our persona is reflected by what we wear. Here are some of the examples that I have for you. It is said that when I come to non-verbal communication is when you're dressed up in a particular style, it shows that you're serious about the business, and with that seriousness, the students begin to take you and whatever discussions are happening. And also communicates with smell. You see, if I'm entering a room with some kind of a body odor or mouth odor, it puts off people. That's one. But it also reflects to people how seriously we take them. If you look at all the dignitaries since morning who have come for this webinar, you look at them, they are very formally seated and they're very formally dressed. This is to give you an indication, give us an indication that we're here for some work, we are here for some very serious business. Likewise, if I'm entering a room, not only not dressed up well, but also smelling in a particular kind, and even that's true for students, the students get put off. Either too much of perfume or no perfume or any of those things. That also is a communication medium. We are communicating something to them. That is the reason why on a Raksha Bandhan, and today is a Raksha Bandhan, all of us who celebrate this festival are dressed in a particular way. There's a way we start our day. We sort of look good. Why? Because that also communicates something to the person on that side, saying that I mean your well-being and I'm so prepared to pray for you. Besides messages, these are channels. Now, channels are how do we communicate message? What is the vehicle to communicate message? There are different vehicles to communicate message. Of course, we all know it starts with the face-to-face conversation. Now we're all talking about video conferencing. We are on a webinar. There's phone conversations, email chats. Then there is audio recording in case we are not able to meet face-to-face virtually also. Now, you see, some of these communication mediums are co-located and others are geographically dispersed. And given the need of the hour, we will have to use different mediums. Like today, we would have liked to be face-to-face and have a national seminar. But given that it is not possible, we are moving to a virtual medium. Are all channels equally effective? Well, clearly the answer is no. If one is given a choice, there's a given a choice, and if there is need for it, unless one needs only very detailed information for which a face-to-face is not required. But coming to student-child relationship, yes, face-to-face will be the most significant channel and most effective channel of communication. In fact, some kind of reports also say that India would have not achieved its freedom from Britishers if the non-cooperation movement or Satyagraha Andolan were done on a hashtag Satyagraha India, hashtag Quit India movement. We finally had to come face to face together on the ground, hold each other's hand, look into each other's eyes to get there. So therefore, those communication channel effectiveness differs. So, the online medium is very fast, but not very deep. So face to face is very important. And the final is the noise around. What kind of noise are we talking about? There are three kinds of noises which can interfere with the effectiveness of communication. One is the external noise. Sitting in a place, conducting classes in a place where it is very difficult to hear. So what you speak, I can't even hear. I keep saying, say again, blurred voices. Okay. Then there is something more important, psychological noise, physiological noise. Now, these are noises that when we are teaching students with special abilities, we have to be careful about, because things like hearing issues, memory loss, dyslexia, other kind of not normal orders, the physiological noises which will interfere with the message that we're trying to give. So we have to be very careful about whether my message is getting received correctly or not getting received correctly. Semantics. I'm talking to an audience which doesn't understand my language, or which does not understand some words. We may have a very strong regional accent, or we may have very strong usage of certain words. If the other decoder or students don't understand this, we may be the best communicators, but we will not be effective communicators. They will not understand. So we be very careful if the language isn't sync. Psychological, this is very important. We all have our own ideas, thoughts about what is right, what is wrong. We are angry, happy. When you're making a conversation with me, if I'm upset, angry, unhappy, you may say whatever you want to say, but my psychological noise will interfere with the effectiveness of the information. This is very important. Lifetime experiences, and this is what some of us and some of the children, especially the specially able children, may be going through. Our past experiences, how society has treated us, how we get, how we are communicated in the society, verbals and non-verbals. All of those things, children may be holding onto their head, and they may have an impact on the learning ability. So sometimes we say that there's a very beautiful story that to put more water into the cup, you have to empty the cup. Some of us are so full of our cups that any more amount of water may be added, but it doesn't go anywhere because we don't have the capacity to hold. So that may be true for some of us, or some of the children who are coming with certain mindsets. Okay, so these cognitive biases have to be taken care of. Here is a picture which captures the essence of what I was trying to say. The man is speaking very softly, but the lady closes her ears and she says, "Stop screaming." He's not screaming, but there are internal screams that she's going through, maybe, which makes her say that. Okay, so there can be these noises that we have to take care of. Finally, the context. Context is the setting. Like I already said, the context you and I are in is not communication for rocket scientists, but we're talking about context of special education. Very important. What is maybe very relevant for a normal education system may not be very relevant for special education. So we have to keep those things in mind. For instance, in your case, you can think about how children behave before a teacher enters a class. There is a change. The context changes. What happens after the teacher comes inside? How do children behave if you are teaching them in a garden? Vis-a-vis, we are teaching them in a concrete classroom. How do teachers behave when students behave when they are taught online? So these things have to be managed well. So communication which is effective is a communication which will take care of decoder requirements, the noise, the context, also the message and channels. When we look at these 5 elements, keep that in mind when we are making a communication with students. It will result into very, very effective communication. Now that was as far as the communication is concerned. I'm now moving on to the second part, which is about something that I'm going to ask you. When we meet someone for the very first time, how do we know whether and how much can we trust the person? Think about it. When we meet somebody for the first time, how do we know whether we can trust the person or not? Now, that is what the non-verbal communication does. We know whether we can trust the person or not by looking at gaze, vocal, postures, gesture, space requirement. So, non-verbal communication is a very important part of our day-to-day interaction with students. Now, yes, Ajiza says eye-to-eye contact. Yes, all of this gets into what is called as a non-verbal communication. All right, the non-verbal communication is 93% of your total communication is non-verbal communication. And this is a big number. We may think that speaking is communication, but no. 93% of what people think about us is, as Radha also says, is a lot about how you communicate non-verbally, your eyes, and this is what it constitutes. Your eyes, postures, facial gestures, physical appearance, touch, space, time. These are called kinesics, and this is what causes 93% of your conversation. Words, therefore, means are only making 7% of the conversation, communication. 93% is, yes, facial expressions also. So let's look at voice. What is my quality of voice? Am I screaming? Am I soft? Am I slow? Too fast? Do I smile? Do I scream? Now, quality of the voice and the use of these elements impact, the voice quality impacts how people are thinking about us. If I'm speaking to you all, I'm very feeble. Someone feels she's so underconfident. If I'm too loud and too fast, they may say, oh, she's rushing too much. So that connect may not happen. So therefore, voice is very, very important part. Some people look at these people, like Amitabh Bachchan is always respected for very deep voice. He holds on to whatever he's saying. There's a very strong command that he has over his conversations. He pauses at the right time. In fact, pauses are very important. One doesn't have to run like a Rajdhani Express, One has to just go at a rhythm, at a pace. There has to be an orchestra one is playing. Posture. Now, how are we standing in the classroom? Are we having slouching, back, forward, backward? Because if we are, then it somewhere means that we don't have control over our postures. There is a reflection question. If we can't control our posture, how do we control students? And on a more, medical term, when we have a straight posture, there is a straight flow of energy, and that demonstrates a control over oneself, one's senses, and a lot of very upright and smart position. It indicates confidence. But these are postures which are to be avoided because we may not know. But as I said, 93% of what students think about us is a function of our non-verbal communication. That's as if they can see. Otherwise, those who can't see will experience our touch. How do we touch them? I'm getting this request, Gayatri. Somebody is requesting to annotate the shared content.
Second, madam.
I'm sorry, I don't get your message. Am I supposed to approve or decline? I am not able to.
Just 1 second. Continue.
Can I start?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So I was talking about postures, and you see, in postures, one has these power positions. One has what is called, you look at the most powerful animals of the country. You know, you look at a cobra, or you look at a swan swinging and opening herself. So when we have open positions, open postures, straight postures, they're called power positions. And students are looking at it. Are you slouching? Are you uncomfortable? Are you comfortable? So you have to manage our postures also. The third is very important. Now, what is our gestures? And gestures are, how are we using our smiles, our hand, our eyes, our lips? How are we using? Now, these gestures can be like rolling up your eyes, aggressive smiles, eating away our nails, you know, holding onto the pen and hitting it on the table. All of these movements indicate that we are not very confident of holding the ground. Or it can, if we are very aggressive in our movements, in our looks, in our smiles, in our non-verbals, then students may fear us, and that might impact the learning process. So we have to come across as very pleasant looking. Now, the way all of these things are called gestures. Are we rubbing our eyes too much? Are we holding, touching our skin too much? How are we sitting? How are we using our fingers, hands? These are things that one has to be careful, because this constitutes that 93%. Facial expressions. Are we always groggy, upset, happy, beautiful, smiling? So just look at very pleasant faces. The pleasantness is through the facial gestures. It's the smiles, it's the looks, it's the eyes. So they say that face is capable of conveying over 250,000 expressions. So they say all it needs is just one muscle, and that muscle is the muscle of smile. When we smile, we use one muscle, but we use over 60 muscles when we frown. So smile is something which makes a very important part. It makes a very tough day look controllable. Facial expressions have been found to be resulting in people liking us. We look more attractive. In fact, people who serve as food servers have been found to get more tips when they are, smiling. Studies have found that, in fact, students who have been caught cheating, if they smile while they are getting punished, get lesser punishment. Well, that's on a lighter note. So, smile is very, very important. Just a very quick video, and very, very small and a quick video. Smile. So that was smiles. Now, next, coming to physical appearance, which is also non-verbal communication. I had touched upon this part when I was teaching, discussing with you about how attire can make a lot of difference. We have to be in an attire which makes students know that we mean business. In fact, I'm talking about students, but that's true for life. In fact, well-dressed people have been found to be happier, more intelligent, stronger, and kinder. It also leads to higher compliance. For instance, imagine a man standing on the road trying to stop vehicles vis-a-vis a man standing in a uniform on the road and trying to direct vehicles. Who do we listen to? We listen to people who are in a uniform, which demonstrates that they have the authority, the expertise, and the respect, that we will listen to them. Likewise, when teachers take the time to groom themselves in a manner which is expected out of them as a teacher, it's very critical that we keep that in mind when we are getting into classrooms. It has to be taken seriously of what we wear out and become. Well-dressed teachers have been found to have more obedient students. Very casually dressed teachers or teachers who are wearing unkept clothes and have unkept hair and not well-groomed have been found to have less obedience of students. I showed you about this earlier also. Again, what you wear is also what you smell. Do we clean up our dress well? Small thing. And finally, another part which impacts the non-verbal communication is time. Are we conducting our classes in time? Do we start in time? Do we end in time? I'm so impressed to see since morning how Varsha ji and her team have been conducting. Everything is on the nick of a clock. Everything is up there. 11 o'clock session means 11 o'clock session. 10 o'clock introduction means 10 o'clock. It shows something. It shows that you respect other people, their time, and therefore the efficiency increases. So in case we are not coming up to classes and not starting our classes in time, ending our classes in time, giving breaks at the last in the right time, it's quite possible that students may say that, well, she doesn't even have a sense of time. Imagine when we go for a meeting and instead of half an hour, it takes 1.5 hours. How do we feel? We feel we are not respected and somebody is using too much of one's authority and status, and that can impact. So understanding and managing the non-verbals of self and students becomes a very critical, universal principle of having an effective communication. Now that was part 2 that I had. Coming to part 3 is another very important thing, and this is, as the picture says, that the child is being given an injection, but the parent or whoever is the nurturer is feeling the pain, and this is called empathy, which is a very critical part of any good quality, effective communication. It's the greatest of human gifts. And when it comes to dealing with students, I deal with postgraduate students, engineers who have worked for 5 years. But we're talking about children who have special abilities. They need all the more of it. Very, very critical. I'm going to play this. Empathy was also in some sense that video that I just showed you. That sometimes we over-assess what somebody else is don't assess what others are going through, but to pause for a moment and know what is this other person going through may be very, very important. So very, very quick video to you for this, but I'm going to pause just after giving you an idea. Okay, it's not playing. How do we cultivate empathy? Well, the most critical of all elements in communication is ability to listen. Listen. And listen not just verbals, but listen also to the non-verbals that we've just spoken about. A child fidgeting with pen says the child is nervous. We need to talk. The child clenching one's fist is indicating something. Child whose face is full of fear. We need to, look at, pause for a moment. But we're also talking about listening as in listening. They say, Alfred Bennett said, the word listen contains the same word as silent. So we cannot listen till we are silent. May I request you to please put it on mute? And the irony is that the world is shortage of listeners. And the profession that you and I are in, perhaps this is one profession, even when we grow up, we remember, because student member teaches us those who have listening qualities. And that's very, very important. But you know what? We are poor listeners, and there is a scientific reason to it. Because there is almost 1:4 times ratio between what we speak and what we think. What we listen and what we think. We listen about 125 to 200 words per minute, okay? But we think 3,000 to 3,000. Obviously, words per minute. Which means, what is happening to these 4 times the words? Where are they going? They are going in us taking a decision before the other person has even finished speaking. That's the point. Start bringing in our biases, our ratios, our impressions into a conversation. And therefore, it's very important that we inculcate the art of listening. For instance, I don't know what you all feel because I'm going on and on and on talking. Until I am silent, I can only imagine what you all are feeling. So very important for us to look at children. There's a very popular story of Stephen Covey. And the story goes something like this, that there is a father with 2 ill-behaved students traveling in a train. and the children are making a ruckus and they're creating a lot of noise. They're going here and there. How children are, what do they do in the trains? So there is this other man sitting on the other side of the berth and he says, what kind of a father are you? I mean, are you not ashamed of yourself? Your children are so ill-behaved, so misbehaved, and you seem to be looking out of the window thinking something else. You realize that you need to educate your children. So the father, as if he was in some thought process, and his eyes are moist, and he looks up and says, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize the children were doing this. And he says, I'm sorry. Actually, all the children have just come back after cremating their mother. They've lost their mother. And they don't know what to do with it. And Stephen Covey says that made the whole man push back, and he was like, he shook, saying that how much he misbehaved with this gentleman who's going through so much in life. And the children have no idea what are they going to do without a mother in their life. And he only looked at what was obvious. There was no empathy, or there could be a reason for why the person is behaving the way they are. So ability to understand the other person also requires us to be empathetic, and that requires us to listen to the other story. And goes on to say that most of us do not listen to the intent to understand. We are just waiting with an intent to reply you back. So that's the problem in listening. And active listening, they say, has to be like a trampoline. Trampoline is this rubber where children jump, go up, go down, go up, go down. There is no physical force required when they start jumping. Now, the conversation has to be like a trampoline. The other person, the student on the other hand, has to be so comfortable in talking to us that there is a rhythm in the conversation. And that's something important. And as a teacher, we have to absorb that rhythm. Only then will this active listening begin. However, there is a very quick process, and it goes what is called as the anatomy. If we have to listen well, we have to practice these 6 things. L is look at the person, inquire, ask questions, then summarize what the child is trying to say. Try to take notes of there are too many things happening over a period of time. Encourage the person to speak, and if the whole conversation goes haywire, neutralize it. Let the conversation not end at an anger, not end at a conflict. So that is very important. I'm going to skip this, and we can come to a couple of things. When you're looking at the person, eyes are very, very important. There have to be minimal blinking. There has to be stillness in the eyes. There have to be soft looks and not hard looks, because that can scare the child off. Then there have to be gentle nods. When they're talking, if you don't nod at them, they would not know whether to go on or to stop. Posture, yes, with a smile. Yeah, look at the center person, this person. Otherwise, if it is this or this is this, we don't know if we're interested in listening or not. And then, of course, there is, not stopping the person. And then there have to be verbal sounds such as, really? Oh, that's very interesting. Is that what you're trying to say? So making those verbal noises, encouraging child by asking a lot of questions shows approachability, that you are ready to contribute to the discussion, that they can come up to you. So this is very important. I'll just play this last video for you before going to the last section. How empathy helped in designing Disneyland. I don't know, for some reason it is not playing. Give me 1 second. Varshaji, how much are we doing on time?
We still have 15 minutes.
We have 15 minutes.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to try to play. Please let me know if this is workable. Hello?
Yes. Yeah, we can view. Ma'am, you have to share content again.
blessed. Finally, when you're talking about empathy, and especially when it comes to students, it's very, very important that we take care of the words that we use with our students. So the power of words is that as a teacher, I think is a fundamental lesson, and as a human being is a fundamental lesson because they are very powerful. How do we treat children in terms of the words that that we use for them? Words are powerful. Why not use them to lift someone else instead of knocking them down? So here is an example of what happens when we don't use our words well. This is again from my favorite movie, Tare Zameen Pe, that what can the power of words, what can be the power of words on a child's psyche? Please listen to this.
पहले आपसे कुछ बात मेरी वाइफ काफी दिनों से इंटरनेट से डिस्लेक्सिया पे छपी सारी जानकारी मुझे पड़ रहा है आप मुझे क्यों बता रहे कहीं आप ये सोच के ना बैठे हो कि हम उन लोगों में से हैं जो अपने बच्चों का ख्याल ख्याल करना बहुत जरूरी है मिस्टर इसमें इलाज की शक्ति है मरा है जिससे दर्द मिटता है बच्चे को तसल्ली हो जाती है उसका कोई ख्याल करना एक अच्छा भी रहता है ये दिखाने को मैं ख्याल करता हूँ मैं तुमसे प्यार करता हूँ अगर कोई फिक्र हो तो मेरे पास आओ या मुझे तुम किसी बातें मैं हूँ ये दिलासा ख्याल करना इसी को कहते हैं मिस्टर अवस्थी खुशी आपकी वाइफ ने सॉलोमन आइलैंड्स के बारे में कुछ पढ़ा सॉलोमन आइलैंड्स में जब आदिवासियों को जंगल का हिस्सा साफ करना होता है तो पेड़ दरख्तों को काटते मैं उस पेड़ के पास सारे पहुंच जाते और जी भर के गालियां देते कोसते कुछ मजा अपने आप ही मजा
Okay, so that's the power of words that happens. This is my final comments, last 5 minutes or so. There's a very famous experiment called the Masaru experiment of rice. Now, what had happened is, this is again the power of words. The scientist had put 3 jars of rice and water into 3 jars, and then for 30 days he did the following. He looked at one jar, and to that one jar he said, "Thank you." Looked at that jar with water and rice and said, "Thank you," going down. Went to the second jar and said, "Idiot." And the third jar didn't even look at it, walked out. And this is interesting. It turns out that after 30 days, this is what happens to the jar. The jar which was looked at and said, "Thank you," had very beautiful aroma and fermentation of rice and water. The jar which was said, "Idiot," did not have fermentation, but there was some rotten rice and rotten stuff that was accumulating, and there were some black molds. The jar that was completely overlooked and not even given either good attention or bad attention had highest number of black molds and was smelling like rotten eggs. Now, this is what happens in human life also. This experiment has been replicated on many, many human life. When we look at children and we say, and then in fact research says, overestimate your assessment. So you're doing very well. I know you will do it. And research has said those people damn are doing much better. Compared to children who are said, I don't think you can make it in life. You are almost killing the person. And finally, the worst is when we neither say anything good or bad, we don't think the person is worthy of a human conversation also. Those children die a psychological death much before. And like me, I'm sure each one of us has experienced that in our life, that what happens, what we need in life is conversation. What we need in life is healthy conversation. So that is what we need to keep in mind as we go forward. And I think I'd like to end the presentation here. There is so much more that I can talk to you, but I think this captures well the impact and the role of communication in the student-child relationship across, especially focused on specially able children. Thank you very much to all of you for your attention. And now I'm open for conversation. As I said, I would love to speak so much to you, but well, we have to respect time. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm closing the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Upasana. It was such a lovely session and an eye-opener to many of our teachers, probably. The first and foremost thing what I really liked is she gave so much of statistical evidences of things in terms of numbers, because I know working in the government sector, we always have to project numbers and the numbers make impact. So very rightfully, Upasana gave us the numbers so that we are convinced why we have to smile and we don't have to frown, or how much is the non-verbal communication. That's 93%. I never knew that, but I'll tell you, Upasana, it holds good, and we all follow that. Just to give you a small this thing. Today morning, before we all switched on this thing and all, we actually in the Department of Education had a video conferencing. सबने क्या पहना है?
You know, Varsha ji, that is because you are taking this work so seriously. You're respecting 310 people who are there. I'm so super impressed. I mean, you all bring in so much of poise and grace because everybody has spent time. This means somewhere you all are in your mind space. This shows that you respect us.
Yes, thank you. And, very important, yesterday itself in the night, I had called up Suni, that is the director, and we call each other by first names, so please excuse me. And that's, I think, a good way that we communicate with each other. It's the corporate this thing that we call people by first name. I also like all my professionals to call me by first name. I made it sure to her, Suni, tomorrow you are wearing a sari, okay? So today morning, in fact, we did the video conferencing ki hamara saris barabar hai ki nahi hai. So, taking this as this thing that, so many things are so important in life when we enter a classroom. The very important thing that Upasana ji brought it out, it's not the content. You see her slides also. The content probably some of us would have also listened it earlier. But the pains Upasana ji has put in across to align her content and also to emphasize and put across the ideas supporting by small videos or the statistics is something that we take home an important message. We have to make our students feel that yes, they are important in the class. We all have learned the chain of communication, the sender and the receiver. But that is, I think, only in our paper of speech and communication that we mug it up to get marks. बट इन द रियल लाइफ हाउ मेनी ऑफ अस आर रियली, हम कितने लोग हैं जो हमारे डिकोडर के बारे में सोचते हैं कि जो डिकोडर्स हैं क्लास में वो क्या एक्सपीरियंस लेकर आए हैं. एंड आई थिंक ब्यूटीफुली उपासना ब्रॉट इट आउट कि उनके बारे में पहले सोचो कि वो लोग कौन से कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हैं. Maybe someday a child has had a bad day at home, not had his breakfast, स्कूल में आ रहा है, या same thing holds with our trainees also. वो हॉस्टल में उनको गर्म पानी नहीं मिला नहाने के लिए या बाथरूम्स ऑक्यूपाइड थे, and they are into the class and we start with our session that come on, where are your assignments, and they are like, give me some time, to settle down myself. So these are so many important tips that one has to take it across. So many points I have got down from her session. I liked about the place she said, unhappiest place on the earth, and a lesson to take. Upasana, I never knew that such a place exists on earth. And an introspection again, when students are not attending our classrooms, yeah, a child at home feels that he has stomach pain, usko school nahi jana hota hai, he's avoiding the schools. So what are the reasons behind it? It's very important that we communicate with the parents for it. The social glue that she talked about and the life experiences, understanding the decoder alignments. थोड़ा सा माइक बंद करेंगे आप लोग तो क्योंकि उपासना जी ने जो कहा है थोड़ा सा मैं अपने क्लासरूम्स को रिलेट करना चाहती हूँ. कैन यू ऑल म्यूट योर माइक्स जिनके भी होंगे, प्लीज टेक अ मिनट.
Just ma'am, once again I'm muting it.
Yeah.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself, Varsha ma'am.
Okay, so it is a very important lesson for us as teachers that we look at the environment around us. We only focus on light की speech reading के लिए light बराबर है कि नहीं, या हमारा जो furniture है वो disabled friendly है कि नहीं है. But simple things like the other day I was sharing with Upasana ji also, a small gesture कि कोई दूर से अगर child with disability आ रहा है, physical disability है, तो just आप उसके लिए space बना रहे हो, चेयर पुल आउट कर रहे हो ताकि उसकी व्हील चेयर अंदर चली जाए. जैसे होटल में जो बैरा है वो अगर हमारी सीट पीछे करता है बैठने के लिए, हमें कितना अच्छा लगता है. सो बच्चों को भी ऐसी छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं जो बहुत अच्छी लगती है. बट आई फील कल्चरली क्या पॉसिबल है और क्या अच्छा है, what is good, what is not accepted in their cultural backgrounds also, we should be really taking care of it. So the first part of hers is the elements, and yes, the smell of it कितना important है. I never realized it, कि हम क्लास में जाते हैं तो जो खुशबू होती है क्लास की, अगर मैं नहीं कहती हूँ कि हमें रोज डिओड्रेंट और ये सब करना है, बट इवन द सिंपलेस्ट थिंग, आई नाउ रिमेम्बर दैट इन आवर क्लास somebody, या इवन इन माय ऑफिस आल्सो, I know my colleagues Swanand and Gayatri, they always put an अगरबत्ती. मुझे उनके रूम में ही जाना इतना अच्छा लगता है क्योंकि वो एक माहौल क्रिएट हो जाता है. And they know the reasons best कि वो लोग अगरबत्ती क्यों लगाते हैं. But it is so important that I like to go to their rooms because ये है. Second part, she talked about the body language kinesis, and I think very very important, the voice modulation. We are all into the field of disability and the voice modulation. जो छोटा बच्चा है, Upasana ji, in my class I always tell कि a day born baby, एक दिन का बेबी होता है या एक हफ्ते का बेबी होता है. आप ट्राई करिए वही सेम कंटेंट, अरे बेटा चुप हो जाओ अभी लेती हूँ, वर्सेस अरे बेटा चुप हो जाओ अभी रोती हूँ, अभी आती हूँ. सेम वर्ड्स हैं, बट द वे वी स्पीक, एक वाक्य से बच्चे रोना शुरू कर देंगे और जोर से, और दूसरे इसमें चुप हो जाएंगे. So our soothing voice is important, but remember not to that extent कि it will put the children to sleep. तो क्लास में ऐसा भी नहीं होना चाहिए कि हम इतना स्वीटली बात कर रहे हैं कि वो बच्चे हमारे सिर पे बैठ जाएं या वो सो जाएं क्लास में. So make a balance. So the teacher has to be very very approachable. एंड मैं ये नहीं कह रही हूँ कि टीचर को रोज फैशन परेड के जैसे क्लास में आना चाहिए, but very certainly Upasana ji has given us tips that the way we dress, it gives a message. आप किसी कॉन्फ्रेंस में जाते हो, आप घर का ही या कैजुअल पहनकर जाएंगे तो लोगों को थोड़ा सा लगता ही है कि भाई इन्होंने सीरियसली लिया नहीं है हमें। और ये तो स्पेशली होता है नाउ इन द पैंडेमिक व्हेन यू ऑल आर टेकिंग योर ऑनलाइन क्लासेस। प्लीज मेक श्योर कि आपके आजू बाजू का माहौल ठीक है, पीछे का बर्तन नहीं गिर रहे हैं, and you are also making the children feel that this is the time. So come on time is what she insisted. Also leave on time is insisted. नहीं तो बच्चे भी उनको भी टाइम की पाबंदी समझती नहीं है. So empathy was very nicely covered with her. And my time is also getting up because we have scheduled to end it by 12 o'clock. So I have some questions in the chat messages also. And one of that question was that I'll pose her. But before I end, I want to tell, I liked the last slide, Upasana ji, that you talked about the Masaru experiment about food. The way we talk to food also, it makes a difference. तो हम तो भाई जीते जागते लर्नर्स के साथ अभी ये कर रहे हैं, तो उनके ऊपर कितना इम्पैक्ट होगा। एंड शी सेड कि इफ वी डोंट कम्युनिकेट तो हमारे इसमें साइकोलॉजिकल डेथ हो जाता है, एंड दैट्स सो इम्पोर्टेंट। नाउ आई एम स्टार्टिंग टू थिंक अबाउट इट कि हम ऑफिस में जाते हैं तब हम कितने लोगों को गुड मॉर्निंग विश करते हैं, कितने लोगों को देखकर स्माइल करते हैं, सिक्योरिटी से लेके तो अपने इसका जो मल्टीटास्किंग वर्कर है डिपार्टमेंट का, हम बॉदर नहीं करते हैं। सिर्फ हम अपने हायर अप्स को हाय कहेंगे, पर हम अपने जूनियर्स को या अपने कलीग्स को कितनी बार स्माइल करते हैं, विश करते हैं। जो लिफ्ट मैन जो रोज आपको ऊपर नीचे ले जाता है, क्या हम उसको कभी स्माइल करते हैं या पूछते हैं कैसे हो भाई? हाँ, so these are so important tips, and I can tell you that I'll share one more experience, Upasana ji, before asking you the question, and we'll pose the question. You talked about food. I think the same thing applies, and my colleagues will agree with me. It's also with your saris, your clothes, your everything, क्योंकि हमेशा मैं कोई भी साड़ी पहनती हूँ तो मेरे कलीग्स थोड़ा मुझे ट्विस्ट करके पूछते हैं, ये साड़ी के पीछे का स्टोरी क्या है मैडम, कितने साल पुराना साड़ी है, कहाँ लिया था साड़ी? सो I just wanted to tell you, and I have my good friends Sujata Bhan, Preeti Verma, अपूर्वा पंशीकर फ्रॉम SNDT, वो लोग हमेशा बोलते हैं आपकी तो साड़ियां देखने लायक होती है, बहुत पुरानी होती है, मैं उनको बोलती हूँ। बट कभी तो भी मेरे एक कलीग ने मुझे पूछा था कि कैसे आपकी साड़ियां 30 साल पुरानी साड़ी भी आज नहीं कैसे लगती है? तो मैंने उनको बोला था कि मेरी एक आदत है, मैं मेरी साड़ियों पर से भी हाथ घुमाती हूँ, बीच बीच में उनको प्यार करती हूँ। सी आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग ऑफ द रिकॉर्ड, बट इट्स समथिंग दैट आई फील, एनीथिंग दैट छोटी सी चीज है लाइफ में, इफ यू केयर फॉर योर प्लांट्स, इफ यू केयर फॉर योर बर्ड्स, इफ यू केयर फॉर पीपल अराउंड, वो कितना इम्पोर्टेंट है। वेदर इट्स आपके बुजुर्ग घर में या क्लासरूम के आपके बच्चे, हर एक को इम्पोर्टेंस दो। एंड आई थिंक दैट्स व्हाट आई वांटेड टू सम अप। देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन इन द चैट बॉक्स, उपासना जी, कि कोई बच्चा अगर या कोई भी लर्नर क्लास में अगर कम्युनिकेट ही नहीं करता हो तो कैन यू गिव अस सम टिप्स बिफोर लीविंग?
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
So, is the question, Varsha ji, that आपने एक तो बहुत ही अच्छे एग्जाम्पल्स दिए, थैंक यू। सो आपने पूरा पैकेज कर दिया मेरा उन चीजों को लाके जो आपको बेटर मालूम है, सो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर दैट। मैम, व्हेन आई एम ट्राइंग टू आस्क कि क्या बच्चा यदि मुंह से नहीं बात कर सकता, अगर वो ब्लाइंड नहीं है, उसकी बाकी फैकल्टी काम करती है, तो हमको उस चीज को ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा। शायद हाथ का टच बहुत एक नॉन वर्बल है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, वो सुन नहीं सकता बट आपकी आंखों को तो देख सकता है, आपकी स्माइल्स को देख सकता है, आपके फेशियल एक्सप्रेशंस को देख सकता है। तो हम यही बताने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि देखिए, आवाज तो सिर्फ 7% यूज हो रही है, 7%, 93% तो पूरा का पूरा बहुत अलग चीज है। हमको उस चीज के ऊपर ध्यान रखना है। जैसे मैम आपने बात किया, आप और मैं वर्षा जी से बहुत टाइम से बात कर रही हूँ, बात आज आपको पहली बार देखा, बट बात में मिठास जो है वो मैंने आपके फोन पे महसूस किया है. The way you come across, the seriousness. So like that even child knows कि आप कितना genuinely concerned है या नहीं concerned है. तो क्या हुआ अगर वो आवाज नहीं सुन सकता? मैं आपको अभी देख रही हूँ, आप कुछ बोल नहीं रही हैं, बट मैं समझ सकती हूँ कि आपका मेरे लिए क्या इमोशन. So I think like that even a child understands 93% much more effectively.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Upasana ji. And, so Anand, my colleague, and Swami have made a video on communication. And thoda time ka hamara starting mein ye ho gaya, but I have asked them to play. Those of you who have got certain other things to do, thank you, namaskar, for coming to this session. And Upasana ji, on behalf of the director of the institute, Dr. Suni Matthew, she has been seeing your session and she said that it's a wonderful session. And from the bottom of her heart, she's thanking you. I have some of my colleagues on my WhatsApp group also. They have told me, "Aapka choice bahut acha hai." So, thanks to you and thanks to Tis Zubin ji also for recommending you. We look forward to many more associations. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone. It's been such a pleasure to be with you all. I could not take your questions, but I have left my email details. अगर आपके पास कुछ questions हैं, feel free. And I'm all happy and all there to support you all in any way I can. Varsha ji, I look forward to coming and meeting you sometime very soon.
Yes, thank you. Gayatri, you can play the video if you want.
Yes, ma'am. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah. और लोगों को बोल दो कि 5-10 मिनट का है, so you can stop after 5-10 minutes. If they want to listen, fine. If they have time up, they can leave.
The video is of only 2 to 3 minutes, not more than that. If you can see this video, it's going to be a good experience. Request to all, tomorrow the session will start by 11 o'clock, but request ki you log in by 10:45 as I'm going to log the meeting by 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
गायत्री, आवाज नहीं है इसकी वीडियो की, म्यूजिक की.
Ma'am, let me figure it out.
Just try if the music comes.
Yes, ma'am.
ఏందనుకుంటాను ఎలా కట్టాలో అలేఖ్యని అడుగుదాం. అలేఖ్య, హలో హలో.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, please log in by 10:45 as I'm going to log the meeting by 11 o'clock. Thank you so much. And for tomorrow's link, I will be sending by 2 p.m. On respective WhatsApp groups. Thank you so much.
Hmm.